What if I told you that the real tragedy of Oppenheimer wasn't the bomb itself, but the invisible prison it created for every scientist who helped build it? Behind the explosive spectacle and political drama of the Manhattan Project lies a haunting psychological reality that rarely gets the attention it deserves. While most discussions focus on the bomb's immediate destruction or the political aftermath, there's a deeper, more personal tragedy that unfolded in the minds of the very people who made it possible. Scientists who unlocked the atom didn't just change warfare forever, they fundamentally altered their relationship with knowledge itself, creating what could be called the first generation of scientists to experience collective moral injury on a global scale. Before the Manhattan Project, scientific discovery was largely seen as an unqualified good. Knowledge was power, but it was power over nature, over disease, over the limitations that had constrained human progress for millennia. Scientists operated under an almost sacred belief that understanding the universe was inherently beneficial to humanity. The pursuit of knowledge was noble, pure, divorced from the messy realities of politics and violence. This mindset wasn't naive, it was foundational to how scientific communities understood their role in society. They were explorers of truth, not architects of destruction, but Los Alamos changed everything. For the first time in human history, a group of the world's brightest minds were asked to deliberately weaponize their expertise, to take the fundamental forces they had spent their careers understanding and transform them into instruments of unprecedented destruction. This wasn't accidental discovery leading to unfortunate applications. This was intentional creation of something designed solely to kill as efficiently as possible. The psychological weight of this shift cannot be overstated. Imagine spending your entire career believing that your work makes the world better, only to realize that your greatest achievement might be humanity's greatest threat. The scientists at Los Alamos weren't just building a bomb, they were dismantling their own professional identity, their sense of purpose, their fundamental relationship with the very concepts of knowledge and discovery. This created what psychologists might recognize today as moral injury, a specific type of psychological wound that occurs when someone is forced to act against their deeply held values or witness acts that violate their sense of right and wrong. But this wasn't individual moral injury, this was collective, experienced simultaneously by an entire community of brilliant minds who suddenly found themselves complicit in something that challenged everything they believed about their profession. The aftermath was devastating in ways that extended far beyond the immediate political consequences. Many of the scientists involved reported feeling like they had opened a door that could never be closed, that they had fundamentally altered the trajectory of human civilization in ways they couldn't fully comprehend or control. They became living witnesses to the terrifying power of human intelligence when divorced from moral consideration. This psychological burden manifested in different ways for different people. Some threw themselves into peace activism, desperately trying to contain the forces they had unleashed. Others retreated from public life entirely, unable to reconcile their role in creating something so destructive with their identity as people who sought to understand and improve the world. Many experienced what we might now recognize as survivor's guilt, not just because they survived the war, but because they survived with the knowledge of what they had made possible. Tragedy deepened as these scientists realized they had not only changed warfare, but had fundamentally altered the relationship between scientific communities and government power. They had proven that academic expertise could be harnessed for destructive purposes on an unprecedented scale, making every future generation of scientists potential weapons developers, whether they wanted to be or not. They had created a precedent that would haunt scientific ethics for decades to come. Perhaps most heartbreaking was the realization that their expertise, once unleashed in this way, could never truly belong to them again. Governments around the world had seen what scientific minds could accomplish when focused on destruction, and there would always be pressure to repeat that success. The scientists had not just built a bomb, they had demonstrated a capability that would make them perpetually valuable to military interests and perpetually suspicious to peace movements. This psychological prison was compounded by the secrecy surrounding their work. Unlike other forms of moral injury that can be processed through community support and open discussion, these scientists were often legally prohibited from discussing their experiences, their doubts, their fears with anyone outside their immediate circle. They carried the weight of their knowledge in isolation, unable to seek the kind of communal healing that might have helped them process what they had done. The secrecy also meant that the broader public, and even other scientists, couldn't fully understand or support them through this psychological crisis. They became strangers in their own professional communities, carrying knowledge and experiences that set them apart from colleagues who continued to see science as purely beneficial. This isolation created a unique form of intellectual and emotional exile that lasted for many of them until the end of their lives. The long-term consequences of this moral injury extended far beyond individual suffering. Fundamentally changed how scientific communities thought about their responsibilities, their relationship with government funding, and their role in society. The innocence that had characterized scientific pursuit for centuries was permanently lost, replaced by a much more complex understanding of how knowledge could be used and misused. This transformation affected not just the scientists who worked on the bomb, but generations of researchers who came after them. Every nuclear physicist, every researcher working with potentially dangerous technologies, every scientist accepting government funding would have to grapple with questions their predecessors never faced. How do you pursue knowledge while ensuring it won't be used for harm? How do you balance scientific curiosity with moral responsibility? How do you work with institutions that might have destructive intentions? Psychological aftermath of Los Alamos created the first truly modern scientific ethical framework, born not from philosophical debate, but from the lived trauma of brilliant people who had experienced firsthand what happened when intelligence was divorced from moral consideration. This framework continues to shape how we think about everything from artificial intelligence to genetic engineering to climate science, because we now understand that knowledge is never neutral and scientists can never be truly separate from the consequences of their discoveries. What do you think weighs heavier on a scientist's conscience? The knowledge of what they've created or the uncertainty of what others might do with it? Share your thoughts below, and let's explore how scientific responsibility has evolved since then.